Hello Key Stage 3 and welcome to your latest lesson, which will be on BMI or Body Mass Index. Please write the title of BMI and the date in your book and underline them both using a ruler. Please stop the video now whilst you do that. Okay, just to start ourselves off today, what I want us to do is that first of all, I'm going to ask you a question about BMIs, but before I do so, I need to tell you a little bit more about what they mean. So the BMI stands for Body Mass Index, and that basically means how heavy are you for your height. So obviously you'd expect a taller person to be heavier than a shorter person, but we're not just saying, who's heavier and who's lighter. We're saying who's heavier for their height and who's who's lighter for their height. So for somebody who's got a high BMI, you'd expect them to be very, very heavy for their height. For someone who's got a low BMI, you'd expect them to be relatively lightweight for their particular height. So here we have got several different sportsmen. So you can see I've got an NBA player, an NFL player, all these different sports going on across the top here. And it basically shows the average height of each of the people here. And it shows the average weight of the people here across the bottom and compares them to an average man. Now, what I'm going you to think about is that this is just here as a little bit of a tool, but I want you to think of why do athletes from different sports have different mean or different average body mass indexes? Why is it likely that a rugby player will probably have a different BMI to, for example, a football player, or for example, somebody who plays tennis? Why will they be likely to be different to each other? So have a go at answering that question, please. Stop the video now whilst you do that. Okay, so I'm going to bring us now onto our things that we're going to learn this lesson here, our progress targets. So first of all, we're going to identify the link between our BMI and our what we call the weight status. We'll do a little bit more about that in a minute. We'll describe the terms GDA and BMI. Now, you did GDA last lesson, but we'll recover it again today. And BMI, as I've already told you, is our body mass index. We'll explain how to calculate the BMI and why it's very important. We'll apply our knowledge of the GDI and the BMI to suggest if a diet is suitable for an individual, and we'll link ideas about the GDI and balanced diets to determine if fast foods should be banned. So let's move ourselves on to task 1. Now I have a chart here. This is a BMI chart and it's quite an important chart. So I'm going to try and zoom into this. I'm going to hope that this works, but I will also be putting this onto the documents page so that you're able to see it there as well in a little bit more detail. So if you're doing this on a phone, you may struggle to see the numbers very clearly. It'll be there as well just to help you out. So what this one shows here is basically how heavy you should be at a particular height. So up the side here, we've got all of they've got height in feet and inches or height in centimetres. It doesn't matter which one you look at. And then across the top, we've got the weight in both kilograms and pounds that you should be looking at. So I'm just going to use myself as an example. So I'm 5'4" tall, which puts me here, right? Now, I should therefore be somewhere between 110 pounds and 140 pounds, shouldn't I, to be in that green area there. Now that green area is what we call the normal range of weights. If I was 100 pounds, then I would be in this one here, I'd be underweight. And if I was 150 pounds or 160 or 170 pounds, I would be overweight. If I was over there, I'd be in this red section, which is our obese section there. Now that'll be the same for everybody. Everybody will, have a range of weights that they should be sticking to depending on their height. So obviously, as you can see, if I was 7 feet tall, that's very, very, very tall, then I would have to be a lot heavier to become overweight than I would be if I was very, very small. So look, if I was 4'6", I would be overweight at a much, much lower weight than somebody who was taller. So I will put that on there if you need it, but I think it's probably an okay visualization to see it there. We have got a few questions on this one here, so I'm just going to reset this up so you can see it properly. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, I've explained it to you a little bit, but I would like you to answer these questions in your book, please. Could you tell me, what does this BMI chart tell us? Why does a chart like this need to exist? Why is there more than one number for normal? And why do you think that the BMI, the body mass index, is important? So based on what we've looked at so far, can I ask you to pause this video now, please, and have a go at answering those 4 questions. Okay, continuing on from our task 1. I'm going to try and teach you guys how to work out our BMI, how to calculate what our BMI actually is. So it is your mass, which we'll usually measure in kilograms. Now, looking back to this over here, there is an ability to calculate from kilograms to pounds. So if I said I think I'm about 140 pounds, that would put me at 64 kilograms, wouldn't it, on there? So our mass in kilograms divided by our height, and this bit's important, in meters squared. So if I'm 2 meters tall, I need to square that. I need to do 2 times 2, which would be 4, wouldn't it? If I'm 3 meters tall, I'd have to square that. 3 times 3 is 9. Obviously, no one's actually 3 meters tall. But you kind of get the point there. If I was 1.5 meters tall, I'd have to do 1.5 times 1.5 to get my height in meters squared. Now, as I've said already, our BMI stands for our body mass index, and these are the key numbers that we need to look at. Now, these correspond quite nicely to these numbers over here. As you can see, the numbers that are below 18.5 will come up as being underweight. They're the ones that will come up as being yellow, like this. The ones that are between 18.5 and 24.9 give us the healthy weight section. That's this green section going on here. The ones that are 25 and above come up as overweight. That is this section over here. And if you have got a BMI of 30 or above, that will say that you are obese, and you'll be in this red section over here. Now, this is quite important to the lesson here. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is, first of all, to write this bit down here, making sure you correctly copy out those units. Tell me what BMI stands for, body mass index, and tell me, please, write down in your book what the BMIs and the weight statuses for each of those BMIs are. Could I ask you to stop the video now whilst you do task 1, please? Okay, now we're going to go a little bit further onwards now. Now, there's a table here, you'll see. I'm going to ask you to draw the table out shortly, but don't draw it as it is now, because you're going to need 2 extra columns going onto it. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to look at this data table, and when you draw it out, I'm going to ask you to work out the average BMI of several different sports. So I've got athletics, basketball, cycling, BMX road and track. I've got all sorts of different Olympic sports going on there. So loads and loads of different athletes doing different activities which require different body types to do it. I've got the average height of them here. Now, obviously, some, for example, basketball, you'll end up with most basketball players end up being quite a bit taller than certain other sports, don't they? So let's have a look for one that's small. So gymnasts tend to be quite small. So as you can see, there's quite a big difference between the height of the gymnast and the height of the basketball players there. And we've also got the average mass of each of them in kilograms there. So your first job is going to be to work out what the BMI, the average BMI of all these different sports is. Now, to do this, the best way to do it would be to draw out the table, but I'm going to tell you now, I need some extra stuff going on there. So you'll see it in a minute. I'll just show you now. But we're going to work out the BMI, and we're going to also work out the verdict. What category did they go into? Are they normal? Are they underweight, overweight, etc.? So when you're drawing your table out, make sure you add on an extra column there, okay? So we're going to have a go at doing that. You'll work out the BMIs and you'll tell me what category they all fit into. But I also would like you, please, to answer me the questions on here. So work out the BMIs of the different sports. That's nice and easy. Then rank them in order of their BMI from lowest to highest. What sports person is most likely to have the lowest BMI? And then work your way up all the way to the highest BMI. Now, once you've done that, this is a bit of a more in-depth question. Are any of those results surprising? Tell me why, if they are surprising. Tell me why they're surprising. And can you possibly explain why? Now, have a go at it. It's a high-level question, but have a go at doing it. Any of these results, do they surprise you? And if so, why do they surprise you? Now, I've already seen this next page, but I'm going to just pop it back on here. So for this one here, I have asked you to, I'm just going to pop this here because it's a little bit clearer to see. So for each one of them, you'll work out the BMI. Now, you've already written out before how we work that out. Just as a quick reminder, it's mass in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. You should all have that written in your book now. So here we go. You've got height in kilograms divided by height in meters squared. Now here we've got it in centimetres. So just as a quick reminder, we need to transfer that into metres and then meters squared, don't we? So 176 centimetres is 1.76 metres. And then you'll have to times 1.76 times 1.76 to give you what the height in meters squared would be. And that'll then help you to work out the BMI and tell us what verdict they'll be in. Now, this is quite a long task, so have a go at doing this one here. You can pause the video on this screen. If you are unable to read the numbers, I will also make sure that this is put into the file section for you guys to see. Okay, pause the video whilst you get this one done. Okay, let's move ourselves on. So can you please mark yourself? Let me know how you guys did. Here are your answers. Have a quick pause of the video, please, whilst you go through the video and work out how many of them you got correct. Could you please send your teacher your score of what you got for this section here? So how many did you get correct out of how many you attempted? Send that through to your teacher now, please. Okay, let's move ourselves forward. Now we're going to talk a little bit now about some of the problems with BMI. Now you may recognise this fella over here. His name is Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was a bodybuilder. And according to the BMI calculations, Arnold was obese. Seriously obese. Now, have a quick look at Arnold on the picture here. He doesn't have very much fat on his body at all. But he does have a very high percentage of muscle, doesn't he? Now, let's have a quick keeping that in our heads. Can you suggest why Arnold was classed, that should be classed, sorry, that's a typo, that's me then. Why was Arnold classed as obese? Can you apply your knowledge to suggest a limitation of BMI? So could you please pause the video now whilst you answer those two questions there. Why was Arnold classed as obese? And on the back of that, can you suggest a limitation of the BMI regime of working out, whether you're okay at your weight? So pause the video while you do that, please. Okay, moving on to our next part. So, obviously, you may finish your first hour's worth of work now. If you finish it, that's fine. Just leave it as where you're at and carry on with it the next lesson. So this is task 2 of our BMI lesson. So last lesson you looked at the Eat Well plate. And that was not, the first part of this. This was the previous lesson. We looked at the Eat Well plate and that told us what to eat and in what ratios. But we need to know how much we need to eat to stay healthy. And in order to do that, we look at these GDAs. We call the GDAs guideline daily amounts. These are the recommended quantities that scientists would suggest for us to eat if we're average people. Now, obviously, if you're a super big bodybuilder like Arnold, you're probably going to need slightly different things than if you're an average Joe who sits about all day and works from a computer. But for an average person, these are what are your recommended to eat. So let's have a quick look at some of them. So here we go. Now, so we've got different amounts here. We've got women, we've got men, and we've got children aged 5 to 10. Now, first of all, we've got calories. Now, calories is just a measure of how much energy is in our food. So, for women, they need 2,000 kilocalories. That's 2,000 calories. You might have heard somebody in your family saying, oh, there's too many calories in that. I don't want to eat that today. But that's what they're talking about. There's too much energy in it. Men need a little bit more. Children need a little bit less. Let's go down the rest of the things that are on there now. Protein. Protein's needed for muscles, for building them, for repairing our bodies. Men need 45 grams. Women need 45 grams. Men need 55. Children need 24 grams. Carbohydrate is an energy store, isn't it? It's broken down in the body to make sugars. Women need 230, men need 300, children need 220. Sugars, that's just a rapid energy source. Fat is another energy store. If there's too much of the fat, it can be stored like on tummies and legs, etc. Saturated fat is a different type of fat. Fibre is needed to stop people getting constipated. And salt is essential in small amounts to keep all of our blood at the right concentration of salts. So you need this particular amounts depending on who you are. Now again, if you can't read that very, very clearly here, I will put this into the files section so you are able to access it if you need to. But I think you can see that fairly clearly here. I'm on an iPhone recording this and I think it's fairly clear to see, but it's there in the files if you need it. So this is what you're going to use that information for now. This is task 2. So I want you to imagine you've won a competition and you can now eat the food from your favourite fast food restaurant for the rest of your life for free. Caveat is you're only allowed 1 meal a day, but still every single day for the rest of your life for free. So you're going to choose your favourite meal from your favourite takeaway out of the following ones: McDonald's, Burger King, KFC or Pizza Hut. Now, I've chosen those 4 because each of those websites, they have got all the nutrition information for all the foods that they sell. So what I'd like to do is choose your company and go to that website and go onto the foods that they've got there. And what I'd like to do is choose your favourite meal and calculate how much of your guideline daily allowance of each of these categories here. I'll just remind you of what they are. Each of these categories, there are in your favourite meal. Now that's going to take a little while because you've got to then write down what's in your favourite meal and then go and research on the internet each one of those things there. Now it's dead easy to do. I've done it on a phone, I've done it on a laptop, I've done it on a computer, I've done it on a tablet. It's worked on all of them, so you should be fine to do this from home. But once you've done that and you've filled out, you know, how many calories there are, protein, carbohydrates, sugars, you can then compare it to this amount on here and be like, right, well, okay, what if it's, you know, has it got more salt in it than I'm allowed in an entire day? And then kind of look through each of your sections and make a comment on each and tell me, do you think it's, you know, how does it fit in with those guideline daily amount values that you're allowed to have each day? Okay, so once you've done that, tell me, is this meal healthy and how do you know it's healthy? If your meal is not healthy, would you recommend avoiding these 4 places, these places here? And have a quick think about what might happen if you ate your favourite takeaway meal every single day for a year. What would you expect to see happening to your body if you did do that? Okay, pause the video please whilst you answer those questions and you do this task. Okay, you may want to use this table to record the information in. Okay, so this is the end of today's lesson. We're just going to have a quick look back on what we did. So I think we've done all of these things quite well. We've identified the link between BMI and weight status. We've described the terms GDA and BMI. We've explained how to calculate the BMI. We've said why it's important. We've applied our knowledge of GDI and BMI to suggest if a diet is suitable for an individual. And we've linked ideas about GDI and balanced diets to say if we think fast foods should be banned. Let's have a quick look at our very last part today. This is your plenary. This is the section that you need to take a picture of in your book or on your computer when you've done it and send it through to your teacher, please. So one of the new Team Y cyclists comes to speak to you. She is dedicated to her training, but she loves fast food. She sticks to her vigorous diet and exercise program, but she asks if she can have her favourite fast food meal once a week. And coincidentally, her favourite fast food meal is the same as yours. I would like you to think about what your response would be, please. And I'd like you to write that response out to her. Now, you can give her whatever name you want to. Dear Mrs. Cyclist is just fine. But I'd like you to please make sure you're explaining your reasons. Now, to do that, we need to use the word because in our answers, don't we? So that's your final task for this lesson here. It should have taken you 2 hours to do this lesson. Please make sure it's nice and neat in your book. And when you've finished, please send your plenary to your teachers. Have a fantastic day. And see you guys soon, hopefully. Bye-bye.